Um, One day, Baba walked alone with Adi behind the house where Baba sat. There he asked Adi, "Do you know who I am?" Adi replied, "I know that you are the chief disciple of Upasni Maharaj. More than that, I do not know." Baba said, "I will not tell you who I am today, but you will definitely come to know, and you will see that your name is made known all over the world. Your future has deep significance in my work. With my love and your obedience of my instructions, you will prove to be a fit instrument for my work." Later, Baba added, "I will make you like Vivekananda." Adi was overcome with joy and began thinking of joining Baba permanently. So Adi was one of the first few who was with Meher Baba at Manzil Imin. Khorshid recalled an incident that took place in the early 1920s at Manzil Imin in Bombay. When Baba first planted in Adi the seeds of an ability to communicate his message to the public. One afternoon, Baba called Adi and asked him, "Will you stay with me for your whole life?" Adi answered, "Yes, Baba." Baba continued, "When I call you, will you come with me for bhiksha, begging?" Adi again answered, "Yes, Baba." Baba then asked, "Will you speak for me as Vivekananda did for Ramakrishna? If so, I will give you my power to speak for me, just as Ramakrishna gave Vivekananda his power to speak for him. Will you do this for me?" Adi again said, "Yes, Baba." Baba said, "Remember this." There were other incidents when Dr. Ghani and Adi would be at darshans that Baba was giving. And at the darshan, Baba would ask them both, "What are you thinking about?" And sadly, and of course, they were thinking of the beautiful women that were coming for darshan and were much too embarrassed and didn't think it appropriate to say this. And so Baba kept egging them on and egging them on. And then at one point, Baba explained that he knew every detail of their lives, and he pointed out dates and times, and they realized they really didn't have a chance here. So they said, "Okay, Baba, next time we will tell." And at that point, Adi went up and said to Baba, "Maybe we could just tell it quietly in your ear." And Baba said, "No, you must tell." And so the next time Baba asked that question, he very kindly said to Adi, come tell me in my ear." Adi accompanied Meher Baba on many of his travels. He was at the Devonshire retreat in 1932 on Baba's visit there. During Meher Baba's visit to California, December 1934 to December 1935, Adi was in Hollywood with Meher Baba. On March 4th, 1936, Adi informed Baba that his father, K Irani, had transferred the entire Mehrabad property to Meher Baba. Adi was with Meher Baba in 1937 in Nasik. When Meher Baba's secretary Chanji passed away in 1944, Adi became Meher Baba's secretary. Aside from being his secretary, he drove for Meher Baba, and of course, as a secretary, was his correspondent. Adi was adept at reading Meher Baba's alphabet board. From a small outline, Adi could communicate Baba's thoughts. Before becoming a speaker for Meher Baba, Adi wrote and published Messages of Meher Baba in the East and West in 1945, and Who is Meher Baba? He also wrote the life circulars of Meher Baba, which were a precursor to the family letters. In December 1947, Baba had Adi come to Pimplegown daily for instructions. He always had Adi drive one of the cars whenever Baba took the women to the Sarosh cinema. In 1949, Adi was one of the Yeswalas who joined Meher Baba on the New Life. On March 14th, 1952, Baba had Adi and Golmai meet him at Mirazad. Baba instructed Adi to have Sarosh continue to pay for the safety deposit box at the Central Bank of India in Bombay, where Baba had kept the handwritten manuscript of the book he had written at Mehrabad in 1925 and 1926. When Meher Baba made his first visit to the US in 1952, Adi was there with Neelu Meherji and Sarosh. During that visit, Baba planned a 10-day stay at Meher Mount in June 1952. However, when the accident occurred and news reached Meher Mount, 5 of Baba's men Mandali, including Adi, who had arrived at Meher Mount awaiting his arrival, hurried back to pray the next morning. In 1956, Adi again traveled with Meher Baba to the west. He accompanied Meher Baba to the Longchamps Hotel. He spoke and was a representative at a press conference for Baba. He was nervous, but ended up being absolutely perfect. Adi visited California during that 1956 trip for 3 days in California. The first 2 days were spent in Hollywood. The third full day was finally spent at Meher Mount with Agnes, and that's where Adi again met her. Adi sent out the Life Circulars as a compiled book in 1968. He also wrote Who is Meher Baba? He wrote for the Meher Baba journals, The Awakener and The Glow. When Baba dropped his body on January 31st, 1969, Adi was the one who made the necessary phone calls. After 1969, he made several speaking tours in the US and in India. He came to the US in 1970 with Meherji to the Meher Center and then to California. Again, they spent a night with Agnes at Meher Mount and went to Santa Barbara. In 1976 and 1977, Adi visited the US again, was a speaker at the LA Sahavas, and perhaps we'll hear from some people who were at that LA Sahavas and that met Adi during these trips. He also came to the US in 1979. Was in Myrtle Beach. He spoke nightly and gave out private interviews. A lot of us who went to India in the 70s went to Adi's talks at the Ahmednagar Meher Baba Center. Conviction was always a major theme of his talks, and he spoke of Hafez, Jigar, and Kabir's poems. In 1985, Steve Berry and others edited this book, Just to Love Him, talks and essays about Meher Baba, Adi K Irani. Next to Baba's love, Adi said he personally felt Baba's love most when serving as a channel for communication of his love and truth to others. Baba said about Adi, you all know about him, nothing more to be said about him. He has been with me for the last 30 years. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, that was so beautiful, Karen. There were things that I did not know, so I'm so grateful for you and these bios. I have a short slideshow just to kind of whet our memory appetite for Adi, some photos, and a beautiful song by Kathy Riley, and then Adi's prayer read by Marvin Schaefer and his wife playing in the background some guitar, and that's Michelle Schaefer. So I'll go ahead and start that.
Steve Berry.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this correctly. Sorry, it takes a minute.
You're the very sun behind the soon rising sun. Let us try to give our hearts to you. Every star reflects the glory of your smile. Let us ask only to be happy. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love. You're the ancient one whose past is worshipped and remembered, and whose present is ignored and forgotten, and whose future advent is anticipated with great fervor and longing. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love. Round the earth your love is flowing as a river wide and deep, making full and rich the harvest that each at time's end will reap. The light of new day now is dawning as a heavenly flower rare. In its heart we are discerning your face, Baba, dear and fair. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love, to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love.
Beloved Meher Baba, bless us all, so that in the stress and strain of our daily life and the fluctuations of our mind, we can learn to relax wholly and wholeheartedly and float on the ocean of your love and call for your breath of joy, your breeze of compassion, your wind of strength to flow into every fiber of our body, every corner of our mind, and every space in our heart to cleanse us of all impurity and to make us worthy of your love, of your obedience, of your service, and above all, your pleasure. Jai Meher Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Steve Berry, there you are. Would you like to share?
Hi, Ruth. Yeah, certainly. Always a pleasure to talk about Adi K and Baba. Anyway, I'll start off today with a few short stories of Adi, just to sort of reveal the flavor of the man. And also I'll relate some important topics that he would frequently discuss in his meetings. And then I'll open the meeting back up to everybody else to share. So as many of you know, Adi first met Baba at Upasani Maharaj's ashram in 1918 when Adi was 16 years of age. Then in 1921, when Upasani directed a number of his followers to go with Baba, Adi was 18 at that time, and he's been with Baba ever since. Now, at that same age, 18, it's interesting to note that various saintly personalities would visit Adi's compound, which is now known as the trust office, but that was Adi's family's compound. One of them was the sixth plane saint Galori Shah, used to come around and visit Adi. And also Upasani Maharaj had his own room there at the family compound. And then of course Baba would come and be there. So this is the kind of company that Adi was keeping at age 18. I think in contrast to that of Alan Talbot, what kind of company was he keeping at that time? Well, that's a story for another day. At any rate, Adi was then from that point in time with Baba until 1980, when he passed away while on a speaking engagement in Southeast India. Now, Adi was a quick-witted boy, and I'll relate several things that demonstrate his spiritual insight as well as his wit or quick thinking. So one of them occurred in, I think, the late 20s, maybe early 30s. One day, Upasani Maharaj shows up at Adi's family's compound there, Kushru Quarters as it was known then. And of course, everybody, the family gathers around. No, at this point, a number of people weren't there, but who was there? It was Gulmai, Adi's mother, Adi, and Padri. So Upasani shows up with some of his entourage, and Upasani goes to his room, and then he asks Gulmai to bring the arti tray. Now, Gulmai, Adi, and Padri were a little bit confused because when does a master do arti? You don't do, a master doesn't do arti for a disciple, it's the reverse. The devotee performs arti and sings praises to the master. At any rate, Upasani Maharaj stands before a photo of Baba with the arti tray and lights the incense, etc., and begins singing praises to Baba. And everybody in the room was extremely surprised. They'd never seen, heard, or imagined of anything like this, where the master is paying this kind of homage to the devotee. And then after the arti is over, Upasani turns to Adi and says, "Who do you think Meherwan is?" And Adi replies, "Well, sir, you being his master, you would know much better than I would." And at which point, Upasani replies, "Meherwan is the avatar." So that made a giant impression on Adi. Now, as we all know, it's not uncommon for Baba to periodically strip down any sense of self-importance from the mandali, and especially the men mandali. And so one time, I think it was in the 50s, when that newcomer Kaikobad had come to Baba and was staying there with Baba, joined the mandali. And as many of you may recall, Kaikobad had been given the unique order of repeating Baba's name 100,000 times a day. Now he would use that digit count method on his fingers and somehow track it and do the 100. Anyway, after several years, Kaikobad began to have serious mystical experiences. of a very high order. In fact, one time, the great fifth plane saint Kirpal Singh sat down with Kaikobad and they talked about different experiences they had. And Kirpal Singh said, "This man has had experiences even I haven't had." So pretty exalted experiences. At any rate, so one day in Mandali Hall, Baba is trimming down the egos of the men Mandali, and he's saying, "Look at all of you. You've been with me all these decades. And here's this newcomer, Kaikobad, and he's seeing me mystically, much everywhere." And Kaikobad couldn't look out and see Baba everywhere sometimes. And so he was saying, "And look at you in contrast to Kaikobad. What can you do?" And at that point, Adi raised his hand and said, "Baba, is Kaikobad seeing you as he sees you, or is he seeing you as you are?" At that point, Baba gives Adi a playful frown because that neutralized Baba's point, right? But in this way, there was a playful, lighthearted exchange that Baba allowed with his Mandali. And so that was another example of Adi's good wit and quick thinking. Another fun little story vignette occurred in the 30s in Italy when the Mandali had traveled with Baba there, and they were staying in a large place, large home. And the men Mandali were kept off limits from the dining room. There's only one men Mandali who could go through the dining room, and that was Kakabaria, but he's passing messages back and forth, etc. But all the other men Mandali were forbidden by Baba to go into the dining room, where on the dining room table there were many, many wonderful, tasty treats. Now you remember the Mandali were not eating luxurious foods ever. They were trimmed back, way back. And so, glancing from an open door at all those wonderful delights, especially the desserts, were very appealing. And Adi, being a chocolate lover, noticed that there was a big bowl of chocolates, but he wasn't going to dare disobey Baba. So he pulls Kakabaria aside and sweet talks Kakabaria into bringing the chocolates to Adi, saying things, "I'm not disobeying Baba, and Baba didn't tell you not to bring chocolates. He didn't say so. Everything's fine." And Kakabaria was newer to Baba than Adi, so he relied on Adi. He brings the chocolates to Adi, and Adi says, "Yes, we'll share these later." But as Adi freely admits, he started eating them, and well, one by one, they all vanished. So later, of course, Baba came to find out, and he calls Kakabaria before him and says, begins to admonish him for this. And Kakabaria defends himself valiantly by saying, "Well, it wasn't my idea. Adi made me do it. He persuaded me." And so Adi was brought forward, and Baba says, "So this was all your fault, huh?" And Adi says, "Well, Baba, knowing the importance of not getting Baba upset with you for disobeying him, Adi weasels out by saying, 'Well, Baba, if I told Kakabaria to go jump in the lake, should he? Would he?' And immediately Kakabaria realizes the tables have been reversed on him, and now he's the one holding the bag, and Adi has basically thrown him under the bus. At any rate, at that point, then Baba turns to Kakabaria and goes, 'Well,' and then reprimands Kakabaria severely, and Adi escapes. So these are the kind of playful and illuminating incidents that occurred, some of them that occurred with Adi, Baba, and the men Mandali over the years. Now, in terms of different things that Adi would convey to people in his talks, one point is the issue of Baba's will. Now, we've all heard people interpret what they think Baba's will is. And Adi used to be very clear on this topic. And he would say, yes, everything happens according, no, I'm sorry, he would say it this way. Baba says, everything happens according to his will. But we cannot say that. We cannot put the cap of Meher Baba's experience on our head and say that everything happens according to his will. We can say that he says that. And so he made an important distinction there so that people would be less inclined to go around and try to interpret what Baba's will is or is not. On the related subjects of intuition and inner guidance, of course, these are wonderful tools that are available to us, but people often can get these mixed up without realizing it. We've all seen people who claim that they intuitively know what someone else's bad motives are, or they receive inner guidance about what someone else should do or should not do. And so how did Baba address these kinds of issues? Well, there's an amusing incident that occurred in the Ahmednagar Center one day. I think it was early 70s, maybe 73, 74-ish, somewhere in there. Of course, Adi would give talks every Friday afternoon at the Ahmednagar Center, which is one of the rooms in the trust compound, where the place would be packed with, in those days, Westerners, all seated on the floor, cross-legged, and Adi would speak. And during one of these talks, suddenly, one Western chap stands up and starts walking through the audience slowly, casually, and admiring the Baba photos that were hanging up high on the walls. So he's walking around and admiring them and stepping through and over people. It's really a disturbance. And so Adi said, "Sir, may I ask what you're doing?" And this fellow replies, "Yes, Adi, Baba, I received inner guidance from Baba that it was okay for me to gaze at his beautiful photos." And so without a nanosecond's delay, Adi replies, "And yes, I also received Baba's inner guidance that if you don't sit down, I should throw you out." The fellow was shocked. I mean, it was kind of surprising. Here's this old man with gray hair talking to this young strapping fellow, talking about throwing him out. But anyway, the fellow got the message and he plopped right back down. And the feeling that I had was Adi's reply was gentle but firm, and so quick. I thought, my own interpretation, but it seemed to me like Adi has seen this one so many times. He knows how to deal with this one. Anyway, that's an example of how sometimes intuition and inner guidance can get mixed up. And it's important for us to stay really clear on that track and really apply it to ourselves more. Anyway, on the issue of thoughts and intentions, I remember Adi used to often say this: "You may be meditating high in the Himalayas, but your minds may be in the gutters of Ahmednagar." Now, we've all walked to the trust office, stepped across those open gutters in Ahmednagar where it's not the prettiest sight. So it's quite a visual image. But in terms of our thoughts and worries and our attachments, the question often arose, well, how to get rid of them? And so Adi would say, you can't get rid of your attachments and your worries by yourself. However, gradually, as you keep Baba as your constant companion, your attachments to the world will become skin deep over time, as your attachment to Baba becomes heart deep. And Adi used to say that motives do play a role in the spiritual life, but there's one place where motives don't matter at all. And that is the motive that one has for coming to Baba. wanting to get closer to Baba. Some people may want spiritual experiences. Others may want a successful life. Others may want some kind of vision of some sort. But all of that doesn't matter because, as Adi explained, over time, Baba will transform your motives. And a good example of that is in the 20s, the men Mandali were very interested in having deep spiritual experiences, getting God realization, etc. But in the 60s, pardon me, in the 60s, one day Baba gathered the men Mandali together and asked them to write down on a piece of paper what they want most. And so what did Adi write? He wrote that he wanted to come back again and again to serve Baba. So that's quite a transformation of motive. Now, a cute little but important vignette on the word karma. Sometimes people speak as if they know about the workings of karma, and I've certainly heard that over the years. I imagine many of you have. However, Adi was clear on that. He said people really don't see the law of karma at work. Thus, when they use the word karma, it is often used as an excuse. So that's an important distinction there. Now, on the discussion of spirituality, psychic phenomena, the occult, spiritual abilities, and all that, people would ask Adi about that, and Baba also was crystal clear on this topic. He said, spirituality is only one thing. It is only love for God, nothing else. Now, on the point of remembering Baba, Adi was often asked, well, what is the best way to remember Baba? And for example, is it best to meditate on him? Is it best to gaze at his photos? Is it best to read his books? Is it best to think about him or talk about him or attend Baba meetings? What's the best way? And Adi always knew the best way for every one of us, which is, as Adi would say, anything and everything that reminds you of Baba is the best way. Now, throughout Baba's life, of course, Baba emphasized remembering him wholeheartedly. And Baba began doing this in the early days, in the 20s, with the Mandali. At this time, Adi was still a student at a private school in Panchgani, and he was trying to remember Baba all the time wholeheartedly. Still a teenager, but he found that he ran into a conflict when studying. Couldn't study and focus on his studies, and it increases retention and comprehension, while at the same time remembering Baba. So he asked Baba about this, and Baba cleared up this point. He said, Baba explained to him, when you're studying, focus 100% on the task in front of you. But the moment that you're free of that, and so that your mind can again start to roam, that's when you remember me wholeheartedly. And on the subject of meditation, the Mandali, of course, didn't emphasize meditation, and Baba never emphasized it for the Mandali either. So the question is, did Adi meditate? Well, he was steeped in Baba work from morning to night, every day. And so that in itself is an incredible meditation, as Baba workers know. But was that enough for Adi? No. He would get up at 4 a.m. every morning. He would sit cross-legged on his bed. He would throw a blanket over him, and he would think about Baba for 2 hours. Not in any traditional planned meditation, not necessarily repeating Baba's name or anything like that. Just think about Baba, remember Baba, just focus on Baba for 2 hours every morning. Then get up and do a power-packed day of Baba work. So that was about Adi's way of remembering Baba. And on this, I'll conclude with this story here of remembering Baba and loving Baba more and more. Adi used to talk about creating the circumstances for love. And he would say that it's up to Baba to give us his love, but it's up to us to create the circumstances for that love and to help it grow. And for example, you would say that just as a flower must be provided with soil, sun, and water, then we also must provide the proper environment and circumstances for Baba's love to grow within our hearts. And how do we do that? By remembering him, by serving him, by trying to please him. And then automatically Baba's love will grow in our hearts by us creating the circumstances. And so that concludes my little sharing for today. And I now turn the meeting back over to Ruthie.
Hey, Baba Steve, that was so beautiful. I learned so much from what you brought today. Thank you. And, you know, at any point you can feel free to jump in again. And we'd love to see your face. Are you able to put your
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you could.
No, but we can see it now.
A second.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, you couldn't see me. Okay, here I am.
Thank you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Well, I was going to ask Kathy and Tom if they were ready and maybe would like to share. I know you had said something about something Tom might have.
Yes, this is a very touching first letter written by Adi to Tom in 57, after Tom wrote his first letter at the Winterfeld suggestion to Adi in 56. And Tom would like to read parts of that letter from Adi to Tom.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ready?
Can you hear Tom?
Just listen. I'm listening to see if we need to move the microphone closer or not.
Here is the first letter Adi wrote to me in response to my initial letter to him in November of 1956. This is March 29th, 1957. My dear Thomas Riley, where should I begin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I received your letter November 4th, 1956. On November 14th, it has been all along in my file for reply. I don't know how to apologize for the delay to send you a reply. I have no words to say anything. By now, you may have gotten abundance of news about Meher Baba through Mrs. Winterfeld. If your contact with her was there, she must have also informed you about the trip to India being postponed from November to January 1958. Here,
Mm-hmm.
this is Adi.
Mm-hmm.
Adi says the following. Beauty is one of God's supermost qualities, and art expresses that beauty in several ways. Your temperamental approach to God through art and beauty is worthy of the treasure it contains. I am sure Meher Baba is the symbol of the highest beauty in his form and expression. Baba knows everything. He definitely knows you. The simplest and most natural way to approach him is through love, pure love. Then comes obedience, which is a rigorous form of giving love through surrenderance. Think of him, make him your own, and live in him. He is with you all the time. Just feel his presence by thinking of him as often as you can, and you will feel blessed. With wishes of Baba's love, yours brotherly, Adi K Irani.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So beautiful.
Mhm.
So beautiful. Thank you. That excerpt in there about the beauty in art just really touches me.
Tom had written saying that he was an artist, and that was how Adi responded. Mhm.
So beautiful, Tom. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I know both of you spent time with Adi over the years. I just wonder if there's anything that jumps out right now in memory of him.
Well, I have a sort of a funny story that was one of my favorite Adi stories, maybe as a counterbalance to that very profound story and the love that you feel in Adi's letter to Tom. So as many of you know, Adi had a fabulous sense of humor, and I was with Adi and Jack in '79 when I was asked to be the secretary's secretary and arrange the interview schedule. So later, the last interview of this evening, we were with Adi, and a devotee came to visit and went in, and they were alone together for a while, and then the person came out and left, and Adi came out and sat down at the table in the lagoon. What is that? The cabin that looks out over the lagoon.
Farm shed.
Farm shed. Yes, he stayed there. So he very, strongly and proudly put a pack of cigarettes down on the table, sat down and looked at me and Jack and said, "This person came to me and said that she was having trouble with smoking. And I told her, Madam, this is a very filthy habit. You have to give it up. Take Baba's name, ask for his strength, and he will help you." And she put the cigarettes down, and with determination, she has left and gone forth with new strength to give up this filthy habit. And then there was this long pause, and he opened the pack of cigarettes, lit up, and he said, "I have given up cigarette smoking many times, but now I am going to enjoy a cigarette." And he started smoking the cigarette. Silly, very silly. Yes.
I love it.
So Adi's wonderful sense of humor.
Yes.
He also, one of Tom's greatest remembrances is because Tom is very Irish and has read all the lives of the Irish saints. Tom, tell that. That's a very touching story.
What is it?
Okay, so they were walking together.
Who are they?
You and Adi were walking together.
In Ireland?
No, well, maybe in some past, yeah, you never know. On the center.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked, Tom asked, you asked Adi about, did Baba ever say anything about the Irish saints?
Ancient Irish saints.
Mm-hmm.
And?
So Baba Adi said, oh, yes, yes.
Baba said there were many genuine saints in ancient Ireland. And then what?
And that was very meaningful to Tom, because he had felt that also. And then to hear that Baba had said that himself through Adi remembering that.
And And he said,
you-
Tom, Baba said that you were one of them.
No, that's it's silly. Oh,
No, we believe that. Don't tell us no.
ah.
I'm
Yeah.
there. You see my red hair. I believe you.
Yes, Baba said people are very, very fortunate to have you with them.
Ah,
And we feel that way.
You
um,
must,
We do.
no,
you must let them know that they should give you
no,
money.
no. Come on, stop. All right, on we go.
So wonderful, Tom and Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Jay Baba.
Well, I see John stepped away for a moment, so I thought maybe Alan, did you have something?
Yeah, but I can't speak without Paige there. I mean, he's the
There he
inspiration.
is. He's back.
He's back. Oh, then I can't speak with him there. You know, I like to tell some Adi's stories. In '77, I went to India, and Adi was in the U.S. and he came back, and so I missed all that. But I didn't miss. He started giving talks at the Ahmednagar Center, mentioned earlier by Steve, on the discourses. And this is interesting. Adi had never read the discourses except the two he wrote. And I think they were on the Avatar in Love. I stand corrected if anyone wants to correct. And Jack Small taped these discourses on his big tape recorder. And the only people there were Craig Ruff, Jack, me, and maybe a couple other people, depending on the time. And Adi would stand and we would sit on the floor of the Ahmednagar Center and we would read the discourse to him. And we would get maybe a sentence or two and he would go into a reverie. And I've never seen anybody go into a reverie like this. He would say things like, and I found that they are available. I think Nashwan has copies of them, which are quite amazing. But I'm remembering his face, which was effulgent. He would go into this state and say, isn't that beautiful? And he would start quoting various poets and spiritual masters. He loved Jigger. And he would speak in languages we didn't know, of course. And we barely got through a discourse after an hour and a half. It was quite a remarkable experience. Now, Adi came back in 1979 to the Mayor Center only. And I spent 3 weeks there. I was fortunate enough to be able to stay with Lynette the last 2 weeks because you were only allowed 1 week on the center. That's a whole other story, which is quite hysterical. But Adi would give talks every day, usually at night. It was very muggy and hot. And he began to ask the question, why? And this went on for a few days and nobody could give him a reply. Why? So one day I said to him, Adi, why not? And he loved it. So every time he would give a talk, I'd be sitting in the front row with Lynn, who always got the disabled seat. And he would point to me and say, this man, you see this man? I asked why, and he said, why not? And he would start laughing. So a couple months later in July, Jack and Rainey got married in Los Angeles for reasons that are not important. And we were coming back to Phyllis Frederick's house to have a party. And Phyllis was seated in the front seat and she turned to me. I was in the back seat behind her. She says, I got a call today from Adi and he's in Washington right now. And he was telling me this historical story and she started laughing. She was not only laughing, telling me the story, she was laughing, telling the story of her laughing with Adi. So she's got double laughs going. She said, Adi said to me, meaning Phyllis, I was in Myrtle Beach and for days I asked all the people, why? And nobody had an answer until finally this one man came up with why not? And Phyllis is laughing, explaining how much Adi was laughing and how much she was laughing. And after she was done laughing, we kicked it into a triple laugh because I said, Phyllis, I was the guy who said, why not? In 1979, Adi, as I said, was giving these talks every night. And one night, this distinguished man came in the meeting place. And clearly he was not a Baba guy. He had white hair. He was probably about 70-ish. And right before the talk, Elizabeth came up to Adi and said something, whispered in his ear. And I told Lynn Ott this, who I was staying with and seated with. And Adi began to talk. And every time he was about to say Baba was God, he would say, Baba was this thing or that thing, or this one or that one. And the talk was brilliant. And he never once mentioned Baba was God. And we were baffled by it. And so immediately after the talk was over, I thought it was the best talk I ever heard. Jack came up to Lynn and me and he said, do you know what happened? And we said, no, what happened? He said, the man who came in, he was Owen Cooper's father. He was the head of the Southern Baptist Convention. And he couldn't say that Baba was God. So we went, oh, that explains it. So we went outside and Jack and Lynn and I and Hermes were out there and Adi came out. He had that beautiful white scarf he would wear around his neck. And we were all laughing and he said, hey guys, how did I do? And he was like hoping he had done a good job. And we all said that was the best talk we ever heard because you had explained why Baba was God from a human level, And it was a remarkable story. Now, the last little vignette I want to tell is extremely personal, and I've only told this to a couple people, and it's very touching. My last year of law school, I had this class called Contract Seminar, and we only had one presentation, and in this class, the teacher was a very nice man. There was about 15 people in the class, and Adi had died, and I was sobered by it and was responsible for giving memorial, to getting the memorial going. And I saw my professor in the hallway before the class a few hours, and I said, Professor Garvey, one of my dearest friends in the world has just died, and I just found it out. And he was a very nice person. He said, oh, Alan, do you want to reschedule your presentation? Because the presentation was basically your grade. I said, no, that's all right. I'll buck ahead. He said, okay, well, let me know. Anyway, I went to the presentation and we were at a big table. It was just a seminar. And it was a very exciting topic. I will expect questions on it later on. Adhesion contracts and unconscionability, a very hot topic in the Baba world. And I presented the paper for maybe half an hour. And then amazingly, the entire class for the first time that semester continued to talk the rest of the hour. And I didn't have to say a word. So when the class was over, I went up to the professor and I asked him how it went. He said, it was the best class we had all year. And then he got kind of serious. He said, you did a great job. I did get an A in the class later. He said, you did a great job. He says, but I want to ask you something. The man you were talking about earlier, he must have been someone. And I looked at Professor Garvey and I said, you have no idea what a remarkable soul he was. He says, I could see it in your face and it touches my heart. That was Adi K Irani. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alan. Jai Baba. John, did you want to share? John Page? Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Do you have any of those photographs that I sent you? If you could show some of those on the screen, I could give a little narration about some of those early times with Adi.
All right, let me see if I can find them. Hang
Okay.
on 1 sec.
While you're looking for them, my first communication with Adi was in 1969 when I was putting together the Meher Baba bookstore in Pasadena. And this was, I guess it was in March. And the place where a person who had a bookstore devoted to Baba would go for books was pretty much Sufism oriented and a few other places. But then I found out that Adi had a number of old books and various publications about Baba. So I started a correspondence with him then, and he was happy as can be to clear out some of his old cupboards. He had so many cupboards filled with old Meher messages, Meher Baba Gazette, Meher Baba this and that, and all these other things. And so he started shipping them over, and we started, paying for them. And he was happy to get rid of these things that have been collecting dust for 30 years in his storerooms and closets, and we were happy as can be to get them, of course. And one of the interesting things that happened back then is, you know, Audie would send a letter saying, okay, we just shipped these books out and you owe 780 rupees, let's say. So, being not too intelligent, I would write him a check, you know, for 780 rupees and mail it to him, and he'd get it and he'd cash it. And after that happened once or twice, the manager of the local Bank of America called me in and he said, John, we really can't be doing a rupee dollar exchange for you. You're going to have to send him the checks in dollars, and then we'll, you know, he can worry about the transition or the, you know, into rupees. But it was you know, part of an early correspondence with Audie. Now, do you have some of those photographs ready? Okay, great.
Yes, I do. Let me pull up the share here,
Yeah.
and you can bring them up.
Yeah.
Where have I got them? Right here. Can you see them?
Yeah, can you make it any bigger?
Let me see.
Otherwise, perhaps I can. Like when you were sending them, or when you were showing them on your slides earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you do that? Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can find them quick enough. Let me see if there's a. Would you
Well,
rather
there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance that maybe I can. Let me see if I can.
Well, hang on, and I will give you that ability to screen share.
Yeah, because I've got this one photograph on my screen right now. It would be perfect. Can you see that?
Not yet. Did you do
Okay.
screen share?
Yeah.
It's at the top or bottom, and it says screen share, and you click that.
Okay, let me go over here. Screen share. Okay. All right. So desktop number 1, I'll share, and then I'll bring that up, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to go to system preferences, blah, 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 grant access. All right. To do this, it's going to quit, and so that really wouldn't work out so well. So
the only other thing I can try is the slideshow, and maybe just get to those particular pictures.
All right.
I can try.
Well, while you're trying to do that, the first time I actually met Audie was in 1970 when Audie and Meherji came to the United States. There we go. That's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could maybe go to the next one or two after that.
Okay.
And
this
Audie was in. This was 1970 when he and Meherji came. And it was our first real, for the people who hadn't gone to Darshan in 1969, it was our first real presence with some people who had lived with Baba. And Audie had such an overwhelming presence. Can you go up a couple of pictures so we can get to actually them being here in 1970?
Right. So we have a group shot.
Yeah, we can take that group shot. Let's take a look at that.
All right.
Yeah.
How's that?
I can't see it. Maybe somebody else can.
Wait a minute.
So Audie loved the fact, this was in 1970, loved the fact that there were at the time in Los Angeles, believe it or not, there were 5 different centers devoted to Baba, 5 different bookstores. There was one in Pasadena. There was one in Venice Beach. There was one in Hermosa Beach. There was one in Huntington Beach, and then up in Santa Barbara. And so he loved, going back and forth to these different places and gave wonderful talks at each one, and including going up to Mayher Mount. And he also gave a nice talk at the Hazards House in 1970. You still trying, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm not sure
No luck.
why I can't.
Okay. All right. All right. So, so of course that was terrific. Adi then came back in 1977 and spoke in Southern California at our Savas in LA. And he also stayed, there we go. Now this is 1977. So this is Adi with, you can see in back, there's Phyllis. There's a fellow to Phyllis's right, to Adi's right. That's me next to Chris Pearson. And you can see some other people who, I don't know that we need to name that LA Baba group, but there are a lot of people that many of you watching would know. So this was up at Pilgrim Pines where Adi spoke, and he spoke with such love and such force and such effectiveness, and it was just a wonderful thing, wonderful thing. Yeah. Can we see another one? Can you bring up another couple, Ruthie?
Yeah,
No
I'm
luck.
going to do my best. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other stories with, well, if you look at just that one right there, even though it's kind of small, that's Adi speaking in our backyard in 1977. And if you go, yeah, some of you may remember Adi looking that way. And then the picture in the middle is Adi up at the Hazard's house in 1970 with his gray coat. And that's the white coat that he used to wear. And this was in 1977. But in that coat, he looked very regal, I always thought. And he would often wear with that coat, that white scarf, I think that Alan had mentioned. But Adi spoke with great love and with great authority. It was impossible for anyone not to feel the power coming from him. Of course, it was Baba's power, but Adi was such a beautiful, clear channel for that it was just a wonder to be around, a wonder to be around. So I think that probably would end. Okay, and if you go to that one there, that's 1977 up at Pilgrim Pines. Adi, giving a forceful reply, it looks, to someone. Yeah. So these wonderful photos from so long ago, yeah, that we took. So yeah, I think that, and yeah, I'm sorry we can't really see them in the other format. Now, come down to that one, yes. Adi was very playful, and so although he did not go to Disneyland, we gave him one of our daughter's hats to wear, and he loved wearing it. And you can see there's Jack Small and Virginia Small and Judy Stevens, and there's Rosalie. I know Rosalie is watching, and John Connor also. This was taken in our front yard in 1977 up in the city of Altadena, which was adjacent to the Baba Center in the Meher Baba bookstore in Pasadena, which by that time had evolved into the Avatar Meher Baba Center of Southern California. In the intervening 7 years between Adi coming in 1970 and Adi coming in 1977. Yeah. And that was the last time that Adi came to the West Coast. In fact, he gave the very last talk at our center in 1977 from the location that it was in Pasadena. It was the property was to go into redevelopment, and they put in a mall there. In the meantime, we moved out to West Los Angeles, then finally back to where we are now in Central Los Angeles. So I think that's probably is as much as I can share now.
That's beautiful, John. Thank you.
Mm,
And thanks for the photos. That really just kind of brings it all back home.
yes.
Yes. And Richie Bloom. Rich, do you have
Hey,
something?
Ruth.
Hi, J
Hi,
Bob.
Jay Baba. Jay Baba, everyone. Good to see you. So I'll tell some of my personal experiences with Audie. I first met Audie in India on my first trip in 1972. And I remember probably my first day going in, probably we had to sign the book, sign some information like we do now with Pat. And I think he was wondering, like, what am I going to do the next day? And I said, well, I'd probably like to go to Mehrabad. And he said, how will you get there? And I had no idea. He said, well, you can take a bus. So what he did is he took a piece of paper about that size and he wrote in English something like, I would like to take the bus to Arangown village. And he wrote it in English on one side. And then the other side, he wrote it in Marathi. And then he took another piece of paper and did the same thing for directions to Mirazad. And he told me like where I would stand near the trust office to wait for the bus. So then I could show this to somebody and they could get me on the bus. And I was just thinking, how kind it was, because I figured he was pretty busy, but he took all this time to write out these instructions. So after days at Mirazad, we would come back and he would give talks, I think maybe once or twice, 3 times a week at the Ahmednagar Center. And I would always enjoy those talks. And like John was just saying, he was very powerful, very authoritative, and also poetic. Some of his metaphors were extremely imaginative. They really were able to capture elements of spirituality, I guess you could say, the path that he gleaned from Baba. And I remember one of the things he would say, if somebody already said this before, just let me know, but one of the things he would say is talking about habits. So he was talking about, Kathy had mentioned giving up the habit of smoking many times. So he says, the thing about a habit is, if you take the word habit and you take away the H, you still have a bit. And then you take away the letter A, you still have a bit. And if you take away the letter B, you still have it. And then he said, finally, you take away the T, and all you're left with is the I. And that's the final habit to break. And I had a fortunate experience, and I forget this probably was around 1975. I happened to be arriving in India and stayed with Nargis in Bombay, and Audie happened to be in town. And Nargis said, you could probably arrange it, or I could probably arrange it that I could ride back with Audie. Audie didn't have a car with him, but we ended up taking what they called a paper taxi. The paper taxi was the taxi that took the newspapers from Bombay to Pune or to another town. So I had the good fortune of just the two of us riding in this taxi from Bombay first to Lonavala. And then from Lonavala, we took a train. Audie thought it'd be better to take the train from Lonavala to Nagar. And so it was a great experience to just be with Audie, the two of us during that time. I was pretty shy back in those years. And Ruth seems to be nodding her head. And he said, he would tell me as we were driving, he was pointing out different scenes along the road, because they had walked with Baba from Pune to Bombay for the Mausoleum Meme Ashram. That was before even the Mausoleum Meme. They were on their way to the Mausoleum Meme Ashram. And so Audie would point out certain places along the road that he had been walking with Baba during that period. I guess it was 1922, 23, in that time frame. But he remarked that something like, it was remarkable how quiet I was. And I think he appreciated the fact that I wasn't constantly peppering him with questions throughout the entire trip. And when we were waiting for the train at Lonavala, we were watching these little kids. They were beggars, and they were just running around the platform. Their mother was there. And he was remarking, what a carefree life these children have. and they're beggars, but they're, you know, they're happy, they're loving, they're playing, they're having fun. And then the mother came over and said something to Adi, and they had a little exchange in, I guess, Marathi. And then Adi explained to me that she was asking if I was his son. And Adi kind of got kicked out of that. And I thought, oh, that's that's nice. I also got to be with Adi a little bit. He was in Boston one time. I was there and got to drive him around. And then happened to be at the opening of Oceanic. And at that time, Kitty was there and Adi were there. Peter was letting us, a small group of us, stay actually at Oceanic. So Kitty was in one room, Adi and Jack Small were in another room, and then about 5 of us were just like sleeping out on the deck and camping out. It was in July, nice and warm. And so I began having conversations with Adi about difficulties of being a single male, going to college at that time, and not meeting women. And anyway, it ended up leading to Adi arranging my first marriage. That's a whole other story that I'm not going to get into today. But the final thing I wanted to share was a dream I had. So the dream was that I was with my first wife, Lori, and we were in Myrtle Beach at Jane Brown's house. Now, in real life, we actually did have dinner at Jane Brown's house with Adi when he was here. I guess it was either 78 or 79, somewhere in that time frame. I forget. And so in the dream, we're in a house, Jane Brown's house, and Adi's sitting in a chair, and it's like a break. And during the break, everyone goes off to have some apple juice and cookies. And Lori and I just stay on the floor sitting in front of Adi. We're on the floor and he's in a chair. And Adi's leaning back in his chair like this, like, you know, with his eyes closed. And so I point to him, tell Lori, Adi doesn't look well. And Adi hears me and he says something like, I'm okay. The next part of the dream is he's lying completely flat on my parents' bed in my bedroom. So now the dream just shifts to Pittsburgh, my parents' house in Pittsburgh. And my parents are going through my father's suits, and Adi's on the bed looking at the suits. And my father always arranged his suits from the cheap suits to the expensive suits. So they start at the cheap suits, and they take out a suit and show it to Adi, and Adi says no. They take out another suit. Adi says, and finally they get to kind of the more expensive suits, and Adi says, okay. And they also give him a pair of shoes. So he's lying flat on the bed, and they give him a new suit and a pair of shoes. So now the dream's over. I go to work the next day around 10:30, 11 in the morning. I got a call from Lori telling me that Adi had just passed away. And I usually wasn't a believer in things like that, but there was like no other explanation. And Lori was very close to Adi, and I figured he was actually trying to convey something to her, and I was the medium through that. So that's it. Jai Baba, good to see everyone.
Good to see you too, Rich. I think he was talking to you. Thank you. And I just wondered, Lynn Barry, you had something you said that you wanted to read?
Yeah, you know, it's so wonderful to be on this call. I just feel such a warmth, and I'm so happy that it's centering on Adi K. I thought that I would just, like it's been said, Adi gave so many great talks. They were edited into a book, Just to Love Him, that Steve was the editor, and he and I were married at the time. I was able to help out on the book. And I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from the book. It gives a flavor of our dear Adi K. Meher Baba says, live in the world, take up all the responsibilities of your life, and play your honest part. Do not hesitate. Remember me. Why? for your own good, not because I will change your destiny or remove your difficulties, but I will give you the inner strength to fight the battle of life. If someone is confronted by a tiger, Baba will not come and perform the miracle of removing the tiger from his presence. This is not Meher Baba's way. Baba says, all creation has been set in motion by the will of God, and it must go on like this. What I will do is give you the inner strength to fight the tiger and overpower it. Likewise, with the problems we face in our life, Baba will not necessarily remove the problems, although he does sometimes. But what he will do is give the inner strength to confront the problem, face it, and overcome it. If Baba removes the problem, then you are free only until you have to again face the same problem. But if you avail of the strength he gives you and face the problem and overcome it, then you are free of the problem forever. This is the real miracle he, Baba, performs in our lives, giving the strength to fight the battle of life. Imagine you are confronted with a tiger and call out to Baba. You are naturally frightened when you call Baba. If a hand comes out of heaven and removes the tiger, you are saved. But naturally, your fear of tigers is still there. You think, well, Baba saved me this time, but will he do so if again I am confronted by a tiger? This doubt is natural. But consider the other alternative. You call on him, and instead of removing the tiger, he gives you the courage to defeat the tiger with your bare hands. You are really free then of the fear of tigers, because now you know that with his grace, you always will have the strength to face tigers and defeat them. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. That was beautiful, Lynn. Thank you so much. He just reminds me of Baba's lion. I don't know why, but he has that's been part of what I keep getting as I'm working on some of these things about Adi for today. Greg Dunn, you've been waiting. Would you like to speak? Greg, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, sorry. So I have two Adi stories, both from my first visit to India in 1976. Before I went, I found out from my bro network that Adi was a fan of Scotch, and so I bought a bottle of Johnny Walker Red and took it with me. And so when I saw Adi at the trust compound the first time, I pulled it out of my bag and gave it to him, and his face just lit up. So I felt really good then, because I knew I'd done something really good. But then I'm sure in the same conversation, I sort of asked him if I could come talk to him, basically have a private interview. And I could almost immediately see this kind of little backing off on Adi's part, because in retrospect, as I've thought about the situation and understood it, there was a little bit of quid pro quo going on in my mind, that I was like buying this interview with Adi with this $6 bottle of Scotch or whatever it was, whatever they cost back then. And so then I knew, oh, well, shoot, now I've done something not so good. So it's, just like that, turned so quickly. But anyway, Adi suffered the ignorance to come to him, and he granted me that interview. I can't remember whether it was right then. I think I came back later. But so I go to him and I want to talk to him about my difficulties with celibacy. And I guess I really thought that Audie was going to, that in this interview with Audie was going to be able to say something that was going to kind of solve the problem for me. But in retrospect, I can kind of see Audie's eyes rolling the minute I put the topic out on the table. But anyway, he gave me some sort of generic advice, probably similar to what he told the woman who wanted to quit smoking. And we finished up and I went away and I felt a little bit dissatisfied, but over the years, as that one settled in, I realized I had actually learned a lot in that little interview with Audie about, the particular problem that I was asking about and a few other things besides. Anyway, that was really good. So then later in that trip, Audie was doing his presentations at the Trust Compound on, I think it was Thursdays or Tuesdays. And he would always have, they had a big room there that he did it. So there would be like more than 100 people every time. And he would give his talks and talk about various topics and translate Hafiz, and really they were quite wonderful. So at the end of one of them, and I guess I'd probably been there a couple of weeks by then. Anyway, he just sort of opened the floor for anything, just general questions. So I sort of came in with two parts of my personal wiring this time. And one of them was that I tended to be skeptical of people generally, anybody who I perceived in a position of authority, or anyone who was making themselves out to be spiritual or whatever. And the other part of my wiring was that I had a tendency to just be compelled to say the things that I knew you weren't supposed to say in any particular group. In other words, every group has its sort of sacred cows and subjects you're not supposed to talk about. Anyway, so I raised my hand. He calls on me, and I said, Audie, I hear people saying Jai Baba all the time around here, and even the little kids, when we came in on the bus, were running along with the bus, yelling Jai Baba, and all the Baba lovers are yelling Jai Baba, saying Jai Baba all the time. And do they really know what it means? As if I did, but I had at least come to know that the sort of formal translation was victory to Baba. And I had a sense that, well, what that meant was something pretty big, because if Baba is victorious in oneself, then truly you've made it to the goal. So I knew it was a big thing. Anyway, so I'm saying, and they're saying Jai Baba. Do they really know what they're talking about? Do they really know what they're saying? And so Audie, and I was fully expecting the whole group of people there to be really annoyed with me, and that I would be ostracized. And there were quite a lot of people, and it's more than 100 people. And so I'm asking this question, and so Audie said, I'm not sure at what point he gave this answer, but at some point he said, say Jai Baba, don't say Jai Baba, it makes no difference. And he went on to just say that what really mattered was basically your internal relationship to Baba. But anyway, so he answered the question, but then he said, now is that everything? Is your question answered, fully answered? And sure enough, I had another part of it. And so I asked part two with everybody sitting there. And And then Adi answered that part very patiently, and not making me feel small at all. And so he answered that. And then he asked me again, so have I fully answered your question? Are you satisfied? And well, okay, so sure enough, I had another part to my question. So I asked part 3. And of course, it was only that Adi was clearly the man in charge in that room. And the fact that Adi was paying me attention, Adi was not getting annoyed. Adi was not trying to hurry me up or shut me up. And so everyone else went along with that. And anyway, so it went on. I think there were 4 rounds of it before I finally said, I really was done. I really had my question answered. I think it was the first time in my life I'd ever had that particular kind of experience where I'd asked a question that I knew was going to annoy people. And I had been made to feel, I had the question fully answered, and I had not been made to feel like an awful person or whatever. So anyway, I was, then and there, I became a huge and lifelong fan of Adi Irani. He remains just the greatest in my book, of course. And Adi being as close as he is to Baba, of course, it's been a very important connection for me to Baba. So that's my Adi stories.
Jai Baba. It's beautiful to see the connection of the men to Adi. We were celebrating Margaret Krask, and there were so many women that were with Meher Baba, and so many men, and how influential they were with each of us. It's beautiful to hear you all speak. Is anybody having question or having trouble raising their hands digitally? Excuse me, Greg had an issue and I wondered if it continued. It's Alt Y on a PC and Option Y on a Mac. Well, Dan Stone's hand. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Rosalie. You've been patient. Would you like to share?
Ruth, let me just say that raise hand function in Zoom is something you can turn on and off, and I think it's off because it's not appearing on any of my menus where it should be.
Well, and I can't find it in my menus either these days, Greg. I have a Mac and I hit Option Y, and that will raise my hand.
Another way to find it is if you have a reactions icon at the bottom of your screen, it's one of the reactions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Lynn. Go ahead, Rosalie.
Jai Baba. I loved Adi. I thought he was so beautiful, just so beautiful. I mean, he was physically a sight for eyes. He was like, he was gorgeous looking. He was just gorgeous. And and when I first went to India in '76, he would give the talk on Friday afternoon. He'd give the talk, and you could stay at Mehrabad, but you had to leave and get a place in town on Friday. So I would go to Adi's talk. Speaking of patience, I was called on for tremendous patience in listening to the God Speaks questions that people would come up with. And because my favorite thing with Adi was he was so on fire with these poets and Qawwali that it just lit that in me. I started singing Qawwali with John Connor that time. I mean, it was like and then also I loved when he thought something was funny. just to be around or in the same room when he thought something was funny, he truly would, he'd had this wonderful chuckle that was, it was delicious, irresistible, kind of like eating chocolate. And one time I said to Adi, I says, you know, in that Gnostic film, the 1937 film, I says, you looked up, you were sitting at this table, and I says, you could have knocked the building down. And then I got that chuckle out of him. One time at this Friday afternoon talk, he was full fire force answering a question. And this little boy, he was a son of some people that helped keep the place clean, and that his name was Babadas. And Adi particularly favored Babadas. He was only like, he was a little less than 2 years old, and he had a ski sweater on, but he was like naked from the waist down, you know, big ski sweater and a ski hat. And Adi is pushing this incredible fire about his statement, and he sees Babadas come in, wanders in, and all of a sudden he went from fire to, he just clenched up, and it just was totally that gone. He had that, I thought, you know, just that incredible, tender, incredible side. And I remember when he was staying at this place that I was living with John and Judy in Altadena, and I had my private talk with him, and he says, don't be so hard on yourself. And I thought, you know, this incredibly fiery character had this beautiful, beautiful soft side. And that, you know, I'm glad I got a chance to speak up, because it's like, he had a tremendous force and conviction, but that other side was so precious. What he did with it, you know, it's just, I'm just very grateful. Plus that prayer he wrote in Myrtle Beach, that is so precious. It's helped me so many times. This is like kind of like a perfect prayer in our stressful society. Just incredible. I'm glad you played that at the, yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Jeba.
That was beautiful, Rosalie. You brought some fire to the meeting. I hear you. What an incredible person to hear speak. And also, I have to say, when Greg talked about that way of just affirming him, of just giving him that love, again, saying, and I saw him do that when he would say, is your question completely answered? It just gave that person so much affirmation and love. So thank you both.
And that 77 Sahavas, all I remember about it was people were just spontaneously singing and almost like dancing. It was so sweet. His sweetness came out. And I just treasure that, even to think of that 77, and, you know, it was such a gift, such a gift. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, hi. So Karen had asked me to share a couple of stories that I'd shared when Steve Berry was in Myrtle Beach, and we had Steve and Jack Small give a talk about their experiences with Adi. So I want to share those, and then also just one other thing that actually resonates with what Rosalie just shared. I first went to India in 1972. I went overland and was a hippie, and actually had not come to Baba by then. I was just searching, and I ended up, and that's a long story, but I ended up in Nagar and in July in 1972. And I was staying at the Dalat Hotel, and would hang out sometimes at the trust compound. And one night I was there um, must have been evening time or something after dinner. And I was at Adi's office, and it was just me and Adi sitting there. And he had one of those little rope beds right outside of his office. And so we were just sitting there on the rope bed chatting. And at some point, Adi said to me, and I forget the context by which he said it, but he asked me if I'd ever tried marijuana. And I said, oh yeah, I've tried it. I definitely tried it. And he said to me, I've always wanted to try it. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I said to him, well, if you think that's good, you should really try LSD. So anyway, that was kind of one of my early Adi stories. When Jack heard that, he said, "Oh, Adi would never say something like that." So he was a protector of Adi's reputation, but Adi did have lots of sides to him. In 1977, Adi came to Washington, D.C., and the Baba group there sponsored his trip to Washington. And so as part of that trip, we took him to see a movie of Superman. And I just remember him coming out of that movie and how much he loved it, and how much he especially loved Superman as a baby, that was what charmed him so much. And again, it just speaks to, there's a side of Adi, and it's like what Rosalie was saying, there's this very fierce side of Adi, but there was so much this other, side to him that when he wasn't on a stage and he wasn't representing Baba formally, would come out. I remember being with him also in Chapel Hill once when he was getting ready to give a talk there at whatever the name of this center is that Rick Chapman had given a talk at. Some of you may know the name of that center, but he was giving a talk. There must have been 100 some people in the audience, and he was getting ready to go up on stage, and Jack Small was with him. And at the time, Adi really was acting as a representative of Baba to groups all around the country and elsewhere. And so he had certain messages that he wanted to get across. And one of them was about obedience to Baba. And so, but just before he gets on the stage, he turns to Jack and very quietly says, "Now, Jack, what are the 3 things I'm supposed to tell people not to do?" And then he got on stage and said, "All right, well, when you're with Baba, no drugs, no sex outside marriage, no going to other masters." He says it like, this is like, but it was just sort of funny to see sort of the backstory about that. Like, that was just part of his persona or part of the role that Baba gave him, but it wasn't who he really was in toto. And one other quick story about him that was interesting. In 1977, during that trip, there had been a very strong rift between the Sufi group in Washington, headed up by Peggy and Andy Muir, and our group, which was a kind of a more informal, Baba group. We were a Baba group, but we didn't have the kind of formal structure that the Sufis had. And there was a lot of tension there, especially from Andy Muir about our group. He was not happy that our group had started. He wasn't happy that we were meeting. He didn't necessarily feel that our group was all that it should be in terms of the comportment of members and things like that. And so that was sort of like in the air. And while Adi was there, he called for there to be a joint meeting of the 2 groups, or he invited both groups to meet. And so we all gathered together at the apartment of a man named Ned Foote. And so Adi was sitting there in one corner, and somehow, and I don't remember exactly how it transpired, the question came up about the tension between the 2 groups. It wasn't like Adi was trying to mediate or facilitate or do anything. And all of the unspoken and strong feelings on both sides came out of that. And again, Adi wasn't trying to make anything happen. He wasn't there as a facility. He was there to give a talk about Baba, but somehow it all came out in his presence there. And it was really interesting because after that meeting, it all dissolved. And it wasn't like Adi said anything to dissolve it. There was like no, he wasn't trying to make anything happen as far as I could see. And there was nothing he did that would have contributed to that. But it was also true that somehow, things really smoothed out, and where there had been a big barrier between the two groups before that meeting, all of a sudden, Andy Muir was inviting our group to go hear Pascal Kaplan or this person or that person when they were in town. And I attributed that to something about Adi's, something about the purity of his presence itself and what he carried with Baba with him into that meeting that somehow had some kind of a healing effect. So anyway, those are a few stories that I had to share with you guys.
Thanks, Daniel. I just have a question too. Someone in chat named Matt is asking about Adi's singing, saying nobody's mentioning Adi's singing. Being a singer, do you have anything to say? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to keep that question.
I know he was a great singer, and he played harmonium, and he loved he loved Jigger. I think it was really his favorite of the Sufi poets that I knew of. And he was, especially in the early days, he would be one of the ones who would always be playing harmonium and singing ghazals with Baba. So that much I believe is true.
Yes, thanks. When he came, I saw him in Miami at the Stevens house, and he spoke. We had dinner, a potluck, and then he spoke into the night. He spoke. And I think it was Scott McKay came in late and asked him a story. Tell him that story. And Adi said, "Oh, better luck next life, brother." And then after we were all just completely full from this amazing, beautiful talk, he pulled out the harmonium and started to play and sing. And we were kids and we were dropping by the wayside. We were like so worn out and full and blown away. And he was just getting started. That's my memory. And he sang into the night, but I had to leave because it was more than my body could take it.
I remember Adi's statement, his thing he would say a lot is better luck next birth.
That's it. That's probably what he said. Thanks, Daniel. Jeff?
Just one thing to mention about his voice. His voice had great substance to it. Are you able to hear me? Somehow, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Great, great presence and substance to it. I mean, Baba used to like something called dard, which is that longing anguish, and he certainly had that. But just going back to my life, I was in New York at the time, and I've been into, this is around 1970 when he and Merji came. And I'd been into Baba for a couple of years. I was kind of new. I had never met any of Baba's Mandali from India. And I had just gotten a job, and I asked the employer if I could take 3 weeks off. And lo and behold, he let me take 3 weeks off before I began work. So I got to hang out with Adi and Merji for 3 weeks, and all day. And the thing is that Adi was so great about answering questions. I got to ask him any question about, life with Baba. And he didn't hesitate. And we had plenty of hours. And I'll give you a few of them. One of them, excuse me, one of them, that what Daniel said there, Ina Lemon, she was from Melbourne. And she was there with Adi when we used to get together in the evenings with Adi in India. And she was there, and she was kind of telling all the woes and problems that they were having, the Baba people in Melbourne and everything. And Adi listened to her very attentively for about 45 minutes. And then he says, better luck next birth. You know, you got the wrong Baba group. maybe next lifetime you'll have a better. But here's some of the things that actually made a deep impression on me. One of them was I asked him, you know, what is it when you can perceive in others how they're feeling, what they're going through? What place does that have in Baba's life, in what Baba talks about? And he says, you know, to be able to perceive how someone else is feeling is good. But to feel how they feel from head to foot is a different order of experience. So he took that one kind of intuitive perception and put it in the context of real empathy and compassion. So he kind of that. Here's another thing that he used to say. This is the balance of mind and heart. Mind without heart is a riverbed without water. Heart without mind is a river without banks. It becomes a swamp. So these were beautifully the way he put it together. And I was kind of a little bit on the swampy side back then. So he said this on several occasions. He said, if I hadn't gotten into Baba, I would have been a great saint with a large following. And instead, what I've had to experience, I've experienced nothing but frustration, humiliation, and exhaustion day after day in my life with Baba. But I did feel like the truth of that he would have been a great saint if he hadn't dropped all of that and came down to deal with Baba's finances and letter writing, correspondence, and everything. He gave all that up just to, you know, to be with Baba. There was another one. There were a couple of guys. I remember Frank Parker and John Florence, and they were both very talkative. And they were outside Audie's office, and they were just talking away as they usually do. And the person came out of Audie's office, and so they went in, and they found Audie sitting in his chair with his eyes closed. And they came forward, and he opened his eyes and they said, "I'm sorry, we didn't know you were meditating. We would have, you know." They just apologized profusely. And Audie, you know how he had that finger that kind of bent like that? It was kind of, he says, I do not subscribe to that form of meditation that does not include noise. So that was a great, you know, because I think of that in Baba's house, you know, people are talking and everything, and it drives them crazy. And I always think of that line, you know, of Audie's there. Let's see. Here's one that he used to say, and I'm sure you've heard it. He used to say, conviction in darkness is God realization in disguise. What he meant, conviction of Baba's avatarhood here down in this gross world is God realization in disguise. It's that incredible. It's a gift that Baba's put in us. I mean, this is the way he would talk. It's a gift put in us, and it's just a matter of time before everything peels away, and there you are, realized. This is one he used to say, convictions denounced by logic are embraced by love, but not without a touch of suffering. In other words, the convictions in life that you see, your mind sees, denounced by logic, are embraced by love, but not without a touch of suffering. And when he said that without a touch of suffering, really what he meant is without a hell of a lot of suffering to kind of bridge that. And someone mentioned earlier some of the tricks that I'll end with this. some of the tricks that Adi used to like how he got Kaka to get those chocolates for him. Well, one time Adi said they were traveling in South India somewhere in an area where they didn't they they didn't drink tea in that particular area, and Baba was off, I think maybe doing some must work with some of the other Mandali, and there were a number of Mandalis that had to stay back, and they were dying for some tea, some chai, and they didn't have any of the equipment. They had the tea, so they found this farmer, and they prevailed upon this farmer to make them the tea, and they kind of explained that you boil the water and you put the tea in and everything. And so maybe an hour later he comes back with this big pot, and so that he brings it over, and what this guy has done is poured out the water and just serving the tea leaves, which he kind of like spinach, so they all had to hold their cups out, and he filled up their cups with the tea leaves, and the farmer says, "You people like this stuff?" And they had to sit there very politely and eat all of the tea leaves. So I thought, and maybe one last story that you probably have heard, but one time Robert Dreyfus tells us he was in Adi's office. He was his assistant, and he was in there with Adi, and Padre storms in there, and he's yelling at Adi, but he's yelling in Gujarati, and finally Adi's provoked, and he starts yelling back in Gujarati, and they're just going at each other. And Robert is sitting there kind of, oh God, he wanted to just have the earth open and disappear. And finally, Padre storms out. And Adi looks over at Robert and said, did that bother you? And he said, Adi, I wish I didn't even want to be here with that going on. And Adi says, well, it didn't bother us. So that's they were incredible personalities. Beautiful. Oh wait, I got one last one. I had a problem one time with diarrhea. No, constipation. And Adi was giving me the suppositories. He was giving me all these different things. And after 8 days, I finally went. If God realization is anything like that, I tell you, it's worth it. But after that, anytime I would come in to these meetings in the Mandalis, in the hall there, or any gathering, as soon as he saw me, he said, he'd make an announcement, here comes the once constipated man. So for the rest of that trip, I was the once constipated man. Anyway, that's my sharing. He was great.
He was great. Oh, that was good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Needed that laugh.
Could I add a little tiny bit?
Who's this? Yes.
Janet White.
Please.
I know I've read and heard from reliable sources about Adi. He was one of the most intuitive of all the Mandali who harmonized with Baba in a way hardly anybody else could. And he was the one of the Mandali who, after Baba came from working with a must in this delighted state, you could ask Baba for anything and he would give it to you. And Adi knew this, and he would go to Baba and ask, we're going to need to replace a pipe. Could we make it a bigger diameter next time? Something for the establishment, infrastructure. That is what he would ask for. Wow. No wonder Baba wanted him near. Also, for deep background, I heard from another source, also reliable, that when Baba had been in his minor incarnation of Shivaji, Adi had been his wife. And he retained some of that wifely anticipation and closeness and surrender to a master that an Indian wife would have to have if you were married to Shivaji. And that just sounded so right. That was wonderful. I have another meeting to get to, but thank you for this wonderful 2 hours. Jai Baba, everyone. And there's the phone call.
Of course. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Jai Baba. Fred? Are you there, Fred Stankus?
Yes.
Thank you for your patience.
I went to India quite a few times in the 70s, and I'd always stop at the airport and go into the exchange where you can buy, duty-free liquor. And I remember I'd always make sure I'd bring scotch for Jalarani and also for Adi K Irani. And when I would bring him Chevis Regal, he would say, "I don't drink scotch, I drink Chevis Regal." And we'd also go over to the canteen, Godridge's canteen, right near the trust office, and sit down, sometimes have a lemonade. And that would just be wonderful. And so we'd be able to share our lime Ricky together. And I would ask Adi a question like about sex out of marriage. And he would say, "Oh no, don't do that." He says, "But once you get married, you could go like a rabbit." But anyway, Adi was fantastic.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Fred. Thank you. All right. And Miss Tina, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any memory of this or if my memory is correct, but I do have this memory of him giving a talk in New York in which he spoke out against homosexuality, and people were upset about that. Does anyone know anything about that?
Tina, I remember Miss Crass being a little upset about Adi's proclamations about sex and things. I do remember that. I wasn't there to hear what you said, but I do remember that at that time when he was here in 77.
Thank you, Viola, thank you. All right. Well, Mayor Prasad. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Jai Baba. I grew up in India, and I was only 7 or 8 years old when Adi would come to our town and give his talks. But I remember as a child, I would still feel his conviction come through, and I can't help but feel now that some of that must have really had an impact as a child for me, because we were playing around, but the talks that he would give would carry such conviction and faith whenever he gave those talks. I remember also, Ruth, your image of lion. I exactly remember him as that. We would go to these Amar Tithi in the beginning days, especially in Andhra and in those areas. There were a lot of people coming up as Baba's successor and so on. But during the Amar Tithi, Adi would sit on the stage and do what Babu did later on for many years, and he was just like a lion sitting there. That was nobody dared to bring up anything like that. A couple of things I wanted to say. Somebody, I think Greg mentioned something about Jai Baba, and this is from the book Just to Love Him. It's in the very beginning where it says Adi's prayer. I wanted to read that. It goes, "Call yourself a lover of Avatar Meher Baba, but you must be willing for your love of Baba to suffer labors and sorrows, vexations and anxieties, and lack of necessities, sickness, injuries, reproof, disgrace, humiliations, shame, correction, and contempt. Jai Baba will then be yours." That was the beginning of Just to Love Him. It's called Adi's prayer. And then the other one was in almost all of Adi's talks, he would always bring up this little poem from, I don't know if it was from Jigar or somebody else, but he would always mention this poem in Urdu. It goes, Tarke Dunya, Tarke Ukba, Tarke Maula, Tarke Tark. It means, Tark means renunciation. Tarke Dunya means renounce the world, meaning that renounce the desire for worldly things, not just going to Himalayas and things like that. And Tarke Ukba means renounce the inner world or your desire for spiritual progress and everything. Tarke Maula, Maula means God or master, but what it really means is renounce the desire for God realization. And then finally, Tarke Tark. And after renouncing all these, you'll still hang on to this thing where you think that I have renounced all of these. So you have to renounce the feeling of renunciation also. He would always say this poem. It's so powerful. Jai Baba.
Thank you. So beautiful. I'm going to go find his book. Ah, Sam, you've been very patient.
Or incompetent, I don't know which. Great to see everybody. Jai Baba. I have a few memories. My first meeting with Adi was on the platform in Pune in June of 1969. At the Great Darshan, we had taken the train up from Mumbai, Bombay at the time, to Pune, the Deccan Queen, going up the guts, quite a trip. I'm sure some of you have done that. And on the platform when we arrived were quite a number of Baba's lovers waiting for us. And Adi was among them, hugging people, greeting everyone. It was really wonderful. And the whole Darshan program, of course, unfolded. And he appeared quite a number of times. He was around Guru Prasad quite a bit. He also was in Ahmednagar on the one day that we went there. We had only one day from very early morning until pretty late at night that it took in the buses to go to Ahmednagar, and we went to Mehrabad, of course, Mehrazad, the trust compound. And one of the memories with Adi, there were a couple of things. We went to see Muhammad Must, and Adi was the one who was translating for him. So he was there with us. The twins were there, Meherwan Mistry, Rustam and Franey Dada Chanji were our volunteers also. And Adi translated for Muhammad. And he said, I remember him saying, so Muhammad, will you bless all these people who've come so far? And Muhammad responded, I am blessing them. And then Julie, I can't remember her name, but she had gone to Juilliard, I remember, and she played the violin, Begin the Begin, for Muhammad. And afterwards, he said, God is happy with this music. Dada is happy with this music, Baba. And anyway, those were a couple of the memories from that. And then Adi gave a talk at the trust compound later that afternoon after we had toured the Samadhi, gotten the tour of the table house and all the things at Lower Mehrabad, and then gone out to Mehrazad as well. And I remember we still had time for tea at the Sarosh Canteen right across from the trust office. Quite an experience. And then Adi, as I said, gave a talk. And then we bussed back to Pune. So that was the first time. I also wanted to mention that Adi was at Meher Mount 4 times. The first time was in 1952 when Baba was headed for Meher Mount from Myrtle Beach. And of course, met with the huge collision in Prague, Oklahoma, near Prague. He was planning on spending 10 days at Mayer Mount at that time, so he sent 5 of the Mandali ahead to help prepare the way. And the Adi, Meherji, Nilu, Donkin, and Gustaji all were at Mayer Mount. They spent the night. And then as soon as they got word that of Baba's collision, they, I hate to call it an accident, because with him, I don't feel it is. But anyway, they headed back to Oklahoma right after that. And Adi and Duncan actually flew back, and Agnes had to get him arrangements. But Agnes described that, she said that that Adi, because Duncan wasn't going to be with them, had to drive all the way back to Oklahoma because they had driven there. And he wanted landmarks. He didn't want a map. He wanted her to tell him what would be the landmarks to look for to find their way all the way to Prague, Oklahoma. And so anyway, that was kind of one of those humorous things. So she decided to lead them. She got in her car and drove ahead of them for the first 50, 60, 70 miles, something like that, to get them on the right highway. And she said it was very frustrating because Adi wouldn't drive more than 25 miles an hour, even though, you know, the roads are a little different from in India. But anyway, so that was a little funny thing. He was there again in 1956. Somebody's trying to cue me over here. Did I forget something? Maybe. Okay. Anyway, in 1956, of course, he accompanied Baba along with Meherji and others at Mayer Mount, and that you can read about in Lord Mayer. There are about 10 pages on his visit to Mayer Mount, and there are some photographs. There are some also on the website, on the Mayer Mount website, of that visit. I saw Adi again in 1970, March of 1970. He spent several days in LA, as John has talked about. One of the things, I don't think John mentioned it, was that he gave a talk at Royce Hall, which is a big auditorium at UCLA. And quite a lot of people came. I can't remember exactly how big the crowd was, but it was really for as little known as I assumed Baba was by the general public at the time. A lot of people came, and we drove Agnes Barron from Mayer Mount down to Royce Hall to see Adi and Meherji give a talk, and they did play music as well. Adi brought out his harmonium after he talked and played and sang, and it was a very, very special evening. There was Agnes had brought a friend of hers, Lottie von Strahl, who was a baroness. And anyway, quite a story about her, but she was apparently very clairvoyant. But her comment afterwards was that Baba's aura filled the entire auditorium. And she was quite moved. Anyway, so little things like that. And then I drove, they set aside one day for Adi and Meherji to visit Mayer Mount and Santa Barbara on that 1970 trip. And so I drove Adi along with Agnes and Martha Aubin at the time up to Mayer Mount. And because they only had one day and it was a tight schedule, other people, maybe Tim Barnhart, I can't remember, drove Meherji up to Santa Barbara to visit the Santa Barbara Meher Baba bookstore that Tim Barnhart and I basically held together for several years in the late 60s and early 70s. Anyway, So we drove up to Mayer Mountain. I remember Agnes asking Audie lots of questions. And I remember that one of the questions she asked was about what Baba's attitude would be towards birth control. And Audie, in a very down-to-earth and matter-of-fact way, answered her very graphically, to the point where I think Agnes was a little embarrassed. And it was quite funny to kind of observe that. But it was also his, as people said, he would go right at answering a question very directly. And it was an example of that. And I thought it's one of the memories that I have from that trip. Once we got up to Mayer Mount, a couple of memories. They reminisced a lot about, 1956. She had also seen Audie, and he was one of the people, there were people Agnes didn't like, and she would admit that, but she really, really liked Audie. In fact, she had that interchange with Baba in which she had said, you say you have to love everybody. Well, I can't love everybody. What am I going to do about it? And Baba said, and Audie was translating it at the time for Baba. Baba said, "Oh, you love everybody, Agnes. You just don't like everybody." And she said, "Oh, okay, I can do that." So that's how she was. So when she said she liked you, that was the highest compliment that Agnes could give, higher than "I love you." So anyway, when Audie and Agnes were there at Mayer Mount together, it was really delightful. They were joking and laughing and having a great time talking about the old times and 1956. And they walked out to Baba's tree, and it was more like they were skipping, holding hands and skipping across the meadow and these little wildflowers. And it was so green at that time in March. It was beautiful. And it was just really fun to follow them out there. And they were ahead of us. There was a group of people with them. And I remember a couple of the conversations they had, just little bits come back. For example, Agnes said, Audie, Baba says that someday everybody will leave him except for one man. And I've always thought you were that one man. And Audie said, "No, Agnes." He said, "I thought you were that one man." That was Audie. Humor, but a little gallant in the whole thing too. It was fun. And then Agnes said, this place, this Mayer Mount, has been amazing, because she had said, "I'll keep it for you, Baba, through hellfire and damnation." And then she would say, "And that's exactly what it's been." So anyway, she said, "I've always felt that Mayer Mount is a place where there's a battle going on between the dark and the light." And Audie said, "No, Agnes, it's not a battle. It's a balancing." So I've always thought, that helps put it in perspective. So those were some of my memories. He also came in 1977. So he was there in 52, 56, 1970, and then again, as people have said, when he came back to LA in that area in 1977. And that was a lovely visit as well. So those were some of the memories, my memories of Audie. And at one point in 1970, I also remember he said to me, he put his finger in my chest like this, and he said like that. And he said, "If you believe that Mayer Baba is the avatar, shout it in the streets. Jai Baba."
Jai Baba. I can't help but comment on that beautiful painting of Baba over your shoulder. Whose painting is that? Who did that?
Charlie Mills. That's Baba at the Narbada River.
Yeah.
And let's see, you can get a little bit more of it here.
Oh yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's about 5 feet high, so we put it up on the wall. But yes, we were in Myrtle Beach, and we commissioned that from the photograph of Baba putting his hands in the water, the Narbada River.
So beautiful. Thank you so much.
Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba. Viola. Hello.
Jai Baba, so good to hear you, Sam, and everyone. And I'm just so grateful to be here and be brought back a little bit to when I got to meet Adi, which wasn't until 77. And I wanted to maybe come in on Rosalie's feather tails there, because she had mentioned the light atmosphere. So I felt 2 atmospheres going on. One is deadly serious and one is amazingly light, almost so light I was embarrassed. You know, it was so light. I was in Gloucester, Massachusetts, I think. And there was some young woman sort of dancing all around Adi. And I was so embarrassed. I was very embarrassed. And then we had a little private interview. And at one point, Adi said, is anyone going to India? You know, Jack Small was there with him. And in retrospect, I thought this might have been a little bit of Adi's sense of humor, but also he was a mensch. Like I experienced, he was a mensch. So there I was, probably looking 10 years old. I raised my hand, and I'm going to India. And he ascertains, Jack is happy, Jack's asked. And he ascertains I'm going alone. And Jack had wanted someone to carry things, and I hadn't known at the time I would be carrying things for his household. So Adi, so in a sense of fairness, you might say, so Adi had it so that I went to Oceanic with my mom, and then from there I was to go to India. So from that spot, Adi had Jack, you know, with the money I gave him, purchase my tickets, meet me at every port of, you know, change, every port of change, and then look after me, which I'm sure wasn't one of Jack's favorite ideas, but I thought it was so sweet of Adi, that way we had of knowing there was somebody there who knew the big picture and looked after everything. That's the feeling how I had. And after getting settled and going to the trust office and seeing Adi, I went into his room and he asked if I brought, geez, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't Chevis, but it was, did I bring Jack or something? I can't remember. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I looked sort of quizzically, and then he said, you know, for the customs officers, yeah, something like that. And then there was a boy who was massaging Adi's feet. And Adi wasn't pleased with this. And I'm, you know, wasn't very worldly. I'm still a bit, you know, daft in that arena. And I'd never known about massage or anything. So Adi looks at me and says, show him how to do it. So I get down on my knees and I start massaging Adi's feet. And he goes, yes, yes, that's the way it's done. And then he let me get up. And it turned out, many years later, when I was in college studying Hindi, my mom met a masseur, and she gave me a massage, and the masseur wanted her daughter to study Hindi. So she gave me lessons in massage. And when I went to India, so it turned out, my job got to be massaging the lady Mandali. Isn't that amazing? But anyway, that's not about Adi. What else did I want to say about Adi? There was something I remembered that was so great, but I can't remember it. Anyway, thank you for your shares. It was like being back there. And I just do so remember his elegance. And somebody had mentioned that he had been Baba's wife as Shiva's Ji. Baba was minor. And I remember his beauty. He had those long eyelashes and his elegance. And he wore that white, shawl. I guess it was a shawl or a blanket over his shoulders. Yes. And of course, he would come out with poetry in all these languages. I mean, it was just overwhelming how big these people were, how beautiful they were, and how good's not a great word, but I can't think of anything else. I mean, they had both sides, as Monty said, be good enough to please the angels and bad enough not to disturb the devils. So I felt that about them. I loved them. Oh, I mean, of course we all did. Thank you for letting me share. Thanks everyone for your shares.
Viola, that was beautiful. I like that about the angels and the devils. Elizabeth?
Yes, it's I just have a teeny tiny story, but I was one of the ones in the audience when Adi made his tour to the United States, and I had thought it was 78 until Dan Stone said it was 77. I was absolutely not a Baba lover. I had heard about Baba through my friend Melanie, whom I met when she came to help out at the Committee for the Future. And I had been working there since 73. And so she invited me to this meeting. I'd been hearing a lot from her about Baba, and I thought, this is really wacko, but I really liked my friend Melanie, so I decided to go. And I wish I could see a video of that or a recording or hear what he actually said, because I really don't remember anything. But I do remember his presence, about his being a very large man who had a strong presence, who spoke well. And it's embarrassing that I just could not remember the content. But I do remember afterwards I had a question, and some of you who know me know I have a lot of questions all the time. But this was a very personal question, and it's embarrassing as to how ridiculous it was, but I am going to share it. My only question for Adi was, Adi, will I get married? I was more concerned about my personal life with boyfriends and things like that. And why in the world I asked him that, I don't know. It is really an embarrassment to think that he was such a spiritual person. Of course, I knew absolutely nothing. And what I didn't know is what Dan mentioned today about the meeting that happened during that trip to Ned Foot's house. Years later, my first Baba meeting, I think was in either 84, 80, I think it was 85. It was at Ned Foot's house. And Ned and I became very close friends. And toward the end of his life, I helped take care of him a little bit. But anyway, so, I have puzzled over what that actually meant. Adi said, yes, I would get married. Well, I've never been married. And I wonder, what was that about? What did it mean? And I mean, seriously, I've thought about that question a lot, because I think, first of all, why in the world did I ask such a stupid question? And why did he answer that way? I must have thought he was a soothsayer or something. I mean, I really did not know anything. And anyway, I just thought I'd share that to see how some of us ignorant ones were when we went to hear a message. And I had no idea how fortunate I was to actually meet one of the Mandali. I mean, that was pretty amazing. And the only other thing that I can think of is years before, as a child, we used to vacation in Myrtle Beach. And when my father died, I stayed at the guest house. I went straight from the funeral to the guest house. And that night I had a dream at the exact time my father died. And got up and read a book. It was one of Balji's early, I think it was volume 1, about the women Mandali going with Baba to the amusement park, and a part about a train. And that they got out and they stared toward where the little train was in the kiddie part. And I just wondered, did I happen to see Baba at that time? And I don't know. I just don't know. But anyway, I wanted to just share that little snippet. But I am going to try to find out what what Adi said at that meeting, if there's anything written about it. Anyway, Che Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Elizabeth. More will be revealed, huh? Karen?
Jai Baba, this has been wonderful hearing everyone's stories. And I want to share my private interview with Adi when he was at the farm shed. And I remember Jack Small being very instrumental in arranging my visit, my interview. He was there. And Adi asked me, I believe his first question was, are you happy or not happy? He probably said I was happy, and then he said, are you married or not married? And so I said, not married. And I said, well, Adi, the reason I'm here, this was my dilemma, is that I'm thinking of going across the country and to be with Alan Talbot. What do you think? And he asked a question. He said, what does this person do? And I said, well, he's in law school right now. And Adi said, who's paying for it? Is his father paying for it? And I said, no, he had a business, a health food store, and he's paying for his law school. And Adi said, go. So I thought I would share that. There's one last thing I did want to share when I was going through all the information to present about Adi. And this is actually about Adi's father, because Adi's father was so generous and so loving to his entire family, because he really liked Baba very much, but from what I've learned was not loving of Baba. And when at one point, a few days before he died, Adi was surprised to find flowers strewn on his bed when he went to sleep at night. The next night again, his bed was covered with flowers. When the third night he waited and caught one of the servants in the act, he demanded to know who had instructed him to do such a thing. The servant told him that it was none other than the ailing Khan Sahib. This was 1945. Adi confronted his father the following morning, and Khan Sahib admitted that he did it. But why, father? Asked Adi. All these years, said Khan Sahib, you had been telling me how great Meher Baba is, how he is like Zoroaster, our prophet. I did not believe you and tried to thwart you in your efforts to serve him. But now I know that you were right all along, and I ask your forgiveness. I wish to honor and worship your love for Baba. You and your mother were right, Adi. Baba is God. And his father holded his hands to a picture of Baba kept on the wall opposite his bed. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Karen, that was beautiful. Thank you. And I know Daryl and Susan Smith are here. I just wondered if they wanted to share anything, quick story or a memory.
Oh, there we go. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
I just had a little breakfast. So that's why I haven't been showing my face. It's been a wonderful Baba day. We had an earlier meeting with some folks and just really beautiful. Oh, Viola, that white scarf, when you brought back that white scarf, oh my goodness. Yeah, I just remembered that. And I just am reflecting on some of your sharings. Also, I met Adi before he went to India. He came to the center and we were living down there. And he gave those, like, I think it was 10 talks in a row. Karen, you might know that, or someone, but it's like he was the only one I'd seen night after night after night. And I was so thrilled because back then they didn't have the purified water. And we used to buy purified water from Jim Roble. And so I would bring in this bottle of water and very proudly go up and put a fresh water by him, you know, but those talks were just amazing. And he often began with a guzzle, I thought. Very beautiful, and then sang on the harmonium. But what a powerhouse, a lion, like you said. And he was so direct about even sexual matters. I remember, I don't know why we'd ask someone said, why would you ask a single man about your sex life?
It was like, kind of on our minds at the time. You'd say.
But he was very frank, and he said, yes, no intercourse at all, but you can do anything else, you know. It's like, whoa, okay. We were married
As a married couple?
We were married at the time.
Nice.
Anyway, but this was like just asking in general, because there was the whole thing about contraception and asking Kitty about contraception and all that business. Well, I forgot this is being taped. Okay. Anyway, one of the beautiful things is that what brought us down there is that Daryl got this job at Friendship House following Jerry Llewellyn. And Friendship House was down in the Black community. And it was such a thrill to bring Audie down there. Daryl might mention something about that, but just, you know, his dark skin and the whole, you know, integrity of race and connection through that. And it was wonderful that he took the time and came down.
Yeah, it was like dark skin in the dark community. And it really felt like preparing the house for Baba. I was just so excited to have him visit. And that's what it was like. But, you know, I think more revealing for me and Audie is that recently Susan did a one-person play on the center, and we got to stay at the farm shed. And I was going to had to give a brief presentation of the play. And it just was so clear to me, boy, I am no Audie. I mean, he would come out of that farm shed, like Susan said, 10 nights in a row and just let forth with such power. And so it just I felt like, oh, I'm in the wake of this great ship going ahead of me.
Yeah, and just to remember Ralph Hernandez, because he would come on center and cook for Audie the whole time he was visiting there. Yeah. Well, thanks for the sharing. I'm looking forward to your video.
Well, thank you.
And Audie's prayer. I guess Michelle
Marvin. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right, I'll bring it up just in a second. I just wanted to say that when I lived in Miami and Audie came, he spoke at the Stevens, but he also spoke at the yoga temple, which was a beautiful structure. It was not very big, and it was really a yoga temple in Coconut Grove where I lived. I lived like I could walk to the yoga temple. So Betty Ryan, Gemma, and I, as Miami girls and musicians, were going to play and sing for Audie's arrival. And so we practiced and you know, it was very serious. We'd get together and practice. Well, all of a sudden the day came and Betty dropped out and Gemma dropped out. And so there I was all alone singing. I had to get up with my guitar and try to perform for Audie K Irani, for God's sake. But I got, you know, I screwed up my nerve and did it as to the best of my ability. And I remember him being warm towards me about that. So that was really wonderful. Also, I wanted to bring up Don Euchre. Does anybody remember that story, Don Euchre's story? Alan, do you know it? No. Well, I called him and I spoke to him. He's like 80 some years, 86 years old now, and he takes care of his wife who's ailing. And he told, he had been there early on with the Mandali in Mehrabad and Merazad. And then he was back, and I guess he lives in New Jersey. Well, some crazy thing occurred and he ended up in jail. And Audie came to New Jersey, or I think it was New Jersey. And he said he was going to go to the jail and visit with Don because he loved Don. And he said Jack Small was like, no, you cannot do that, Audie. You cannot go in the jail. And Audie said, pfft, and went in and just had this wonderful time with Don. And it was just a beautiful coming together. And then Audie left and the guard came up and said to Don, who was that man? And so he said, well, he's an old friend of mine, Audie K Irani. He said, I have never seen anyone with such power. And then I think the other part of the story, whether that's what Dawn told me, but I think I read the story somewhere and then somebody added on, or whether it was true that the guard said, he must be a Don in the mafia, because that's the only power I guess this man could envision. But yes, the power of the lion, no question. And then that amazingly beautiful, soft, loving side to continually ask someone, have I answered your question? Are you satisfied? Beautiful. Well,
And such conviction he had. That was his word, conviction.
Right.
That's the word. Anybody want to jump in? I'll show this video quickly one more time. And again, thank Kathy Riley for the song. It's a Bob Brown song, a beautiful Bob Brown song that I believe Kathy was trying to remember. She sang one time with Audie there, and when it was done, she said he was weeping. And so she was trying to remember the song. She knew it was Bob Brown, so she thought it might be this song. So she made it for this video. And then Marvin and Michelle made this beautiful recording of Audie's prayer. So I'll share that, I think. Let's see if I'm in the right place. No. Sorry. One more second. Try that one more time and find it. Oh, interesting. All right, let's try it this way. Okay. One second, sorry for the delay. No, come on now. There we go.
You're the very sun behind the soon rising sun. Let us try to give our hearts to you. Every star reflects the glory of your smile. Let us ask only to be happy. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love. You're the ancient one whose past is worshipped and remembered, and whose present is ignored and forgotten, and whose future advent is anticipated with great fervor and longing. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love. Round the earth your love is flowing as a river wide and deep, making full and rich the harvest that each at time's end will reap. The light of new day now is dawning as a heavenly flower rare. In its heart we are discerning your face, Baba, dear and fair. If I knew I really loved you, I wouldn't mind the pain to wait 1,000 years to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love, to touch your face, to feel your grace, to have a trace of your love.
Beloved Meher Baba, bless us all, so that in the stress and strain of our daily life and the fluctuations of our mind, we can learn to relax wholly and wholeheartedly and float on the ocean of your love and call for your breath of joy, your breeze of compassion, your wind of strength to flow into every fiber of our body, every corner of our mind, and every space in our heart to cleanse us of all impurity and to make us worthy of your love, of your obedience, of your service, and above all, your pleasure. Jai Meher Baba.
Jai Baba, everyone. All right. It's 10 minutes to 2. If anybody else has anything to say, we'd be happy to hear it. Okay.
I have a
Cheryl, go ahead.
I have a comment about Adi's prayer. I heard that prayer spoken by Adi, and he's the very first time he ever spoke it out at the meeting place in Meher Center. when he was visiting at Mayor Center, and I had the fortune to be there. And I went up immediately to Audie and asked him after his talk and after, just waiting for other people to talk with him, and asked him for a copy of that prayer because it struck me so deeply. And he said, ask Jack Small to give you a copy. So I went to Jack and he said, come, I'll bring it to you, next day or the day after at the meeting again, the meeting house when Audie was going to speak. And when Jack handed it to me, he said, Audie wrote that prayer here at the farm shed because of all the people that had private gatherings with him, private interviews, and all the troubles they had been bringing and all the questions that they had and their anguish. And that was what had inspired Audie to write that prayer.
Oh, wow.
So wonderful you say that, Cheryl. That's what I was thinking too. It looked like it had just.
Yeah, and Jack wrote it out for me, and I don't know where I put it. It's somewhere. It's slightly different. Every time I hear somebody read it, the words are slightly different. It's changed around. Not the essence of it is exactly the same, but it's just so deeply moving to me. And it was for us. He wrote it for us here in the West. Well, for everyone, I'm sure, but it was specifically inspired by all the anguish of the Baba lovers that went to speak with him in their private interviews at the farm shed.
Well, you need to find it, Cheryl, and bring it to.
And he actually wrote what Jack wrote, and I still remember it very clearly because something that's very meaningful to me, I remember it word for word. He actually wrote originally to inundate and flood rather than flow into. The word flow doesn't change the meaning at all, but to inundate and flood every fiber of our bodies, and it was plural, every corner of our minds and every space of our hearts. I felt so fortunate to be there at that very first. He had just written it that day, that night that we heard the poem, and I got it a day or two later from Jack Small. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Well, maybe a moment of silence in memory of the beloved's gifts, and Audie being one of the most beautiful. Jai Baba.
Thank you all.
Hey, Baba.
Baba.
Thank you, Baba, for such a beautiful Baba family.
I'm wondering if any of Audie's singing his ghazals was ever recorded. It would sure be wonderful to hear him sing. There's one line I remember from maybe 1978 when he would be at the Ahmednagar Center giving his talk and playing. And I've asked musicians if they remember hearing this, and I haven't ever heard anybody has, but it was Mehera Baba Kutube Alam Mehera Baba. It just gets me in that rhythm of that magnificent atmosphere of being there with Audie.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I didn't know. Thank you, Lynn. You really got it, girl. I never knew.
Yeah.
Ruth, I'll share one quick thing.
Yeah.
This was at a dinner in Myrtle Beach at Jane Brown's house. We were having dinner with Audie, and Jane Brown's landlord came in. He spoke with a deep Southern accent. And he said to Jane, as we were at the table eating, Jane, does he speak English? And without missing a beat, Audie said, sir, not only do I speak English, I think in English. Hey, Barbara.
Can I share one last thing?
Sure.
You can hear me? Okay. So I just got this from Frank Parker, who was at the meeting earlier. A quote from Audie during a talk on Baba's birthday in 1972 at the Trust Compound Baba Center. God as God is not man. God as man is not God. He is the avatar who comes to bring God down to man and man up to God. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Great.
That's great. I was hoping for both things, and you and Lynn just provided them. Thanks.
Thanks, Ruthie. Jai Baba, everyone.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Richie, Lynn has been a good influence on you.
Who?
Yes.
Somebody.
Signing up. Oh, Richie and Lynn. Yeah.
Karen's done wonders for you, Alan.
You already heard the story earlier.
Jai Baba, everyone.
Jai Baba.
Baba, Viola.
Thank you all. Fabulous time together. And Rosalie, that photo of you from whenever, 1977. That was gorgeous. That was really, that's fun. I'm going to keep that. You're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like a copy of that. Yeah, because he stayed with us like a week or something, you know. Yeah, I used to pick apricots for him in the yard. Yeah.
Yeah, you look about 18 or 16 or something. Beautiful. Well, I'm so sorry. I missed the Daryl and Susan Smith meeting this morning.
Oh, Ruth, we had a special, Jerry Llewellyn suggested we have a special singing because of Baba's birthday coming up. So Barbara Witherwax sang a really beautiful song, and Jerry and Carol Ann played and sang, and Daryl and I sang and a new song, and Dartha sang a little song. And Carol Werner sang a song. It was just so full and rich.
Sounds so amazing. I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you next time, a couple weeks from now.
Well, we'll see. I know we're going to visit Fred Ella soon.
Oh.
Yeah. So that
I know you've got your work cut out for you, girlfriend.
Stay out of trouble. That's all it does. It just
keeps you out of trouble. Keeps you focused.
Yes.
Okay, have a good day.
Good
to see you, Richie and Lynn.
Yeah.
You're moving around, Lynn.
All right.
Okay? You're not too hurt by your fall.
We've got more things going on now. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great to see you all.
Good to see you, Elizabeth.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Bye, Liz. Bye, Elizabeth.
Oh,
thanks for sharing.
Oh, yeah. I hope it was okay. I just wasn't sure, but it was a little something.
It was wonderful. Oh, honey.
Okay. I didn't know about the singing thing this morning with Daryl and Susan. Is that on the calendar? Do you know?
No, that's their, they have their meeting every other Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I think that the way I always know, I don't even have the link anymore. I'd have to get in touch with them and tell them to send me their Zoom link because I don't have it.
Yeah. I was going to send them a chat note, but they got off too quickly. But I would have loved to have heard that.
For that.
But, yeah, that's okay. Anyway, you were a great host again.
Oh, yes.
You're a fabulous host.
You are, Ruthie.
Thanks, sweetheart. You know, it's Baba. Karen, you know, you guys know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to listen to the beginning part. I actually attended my church service. It was Youth Sunday.
Well, Jamie
And-
Newell is playing at 2:30. He has a concert.
Oh yeah, I'm signed up for that. I know about that one.
Yes, don't forget.
So I'm coming back for that. So I guess I better get off and recharge my
Jacqueline's
iPad.
here for meditation time. Hi, Jack.
Jay Baba.
Hey, Baba. Have a wonderful time.
Okay, we can see who's here for meditation, who's still on. And I know some of you are going to be jumping off for the concert today at 2:30. So so anyway, we'll get going soon so that those of you who need to leave early can. And those of you who are here for the meditation, if you can show yourselves or speak or something, so I know you're really here for that purpose. And I will lead us in. I will start it in just a minute. We start with the light prayer and then do our healing circle and world prayer. And we do all this with Baba and whatever team he chooses to bring in. So, okay. I know a lot of you are muted because you were muted from the last meeting. Okay, so if anyone wishes to speak before we get started, feel free. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and start us.
Hi.
Is that Marcia?
Yeah.
Okay, good to see you.
I'm tired from all these meetings.
I know, and I have
then
so
at
many.
4 o'clock is Jeff, and then the late night chat and RT.
I
Oh my
know.
God.
Here's Veronica. So I know she's got to jump off for the concert. So anyway, but we have some people with us. So we'll go ahead and start, and I will mute us all. And oh, Arnell is here. Great. Hi. Yeah, I thought you might not be here because of the Jamie Newell concert. It starts at 2:30.
No, I almost didn't make it because I had my Baba meeting 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I just had to quickly go eat something before I could get here.
Yeah, me too. I have a group that goes from 12 to 1, another prayer group with the light prayer.
Yeah,
So I had to quickly eat too. We have Marge and Jack with us today, and we may have some other visitors.
Oh,
So,
Raisa is here. Oh, cool.
and we have Marcia.
Yeah, a friend of mine is supposed to come too. I don't know if she's going to make it. It's
Okay, great. And Veronica.
Bonsoir, Armelle. Bonsoir Véronica, ça va?
Oui, ça va.
On t'a pas vu à la réunion, donc je me suis dit que tu devais avoir autre chose.
Voilà, trop de choses en ce moment, trop de choses. Je suis désolée, je suis obligée de...
Pas de problème.
Voilà, là, je reste qu'une demi-heure parce que je veux faire le concert. Là.
Oui, moi aussi. Jackie, we would like to all go to the concert. So.
Okay. Well, we will go ahead and start, and I'll lead us as far as we can go, and I'll keep going. But you all jump off when you need to. I know it starts at 2:30. So.
2:30.
Okay. I think so. So if you
Yes, it starts at 2:30, so we
Right.
won't stay long.
All right.
Thank you so
all right.
much, Jackie.
Well, it's nice to see you all, and we'll make the most of the time we have. So,
Okay.
I'm going to mute everyone here now. Okay, and just jump off quietly when you need to. That's fine. Okay. We take a deep breath and release it slowly. As we breathe in, we visualize the light filling our being. As we breathe out, we let go of whatever we need to be fully present here. Breathing in light, breathing out light. And now we say, and we call in Baba and his team to be with us. We give thanks for their being with us this busy birthday time. So, right. So breathing deeply, we say silently from deep within, I release all of my past